My lecture this morning is going to be specifically about you. You live in an amazing body that has got an inbuilt ability to heal itself. So we do live in an amazing body that has been designed to heal itself. And we know that it'll heal itself because if you have a broken bone, it will heal. And every surgeon knows he can set a bone, but he cannot heal the bone. And if you get a cut, he can stitch the cut, but he cannot heal the cut, can he? The human body was designed to heal itself, and it will heal itself. Little tiny two-letter word here. It'll heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And many people are sick today through ignorance. They are unaware of the specific conditions that the body requires to heal itself. So I can heal no one, and no herb can heal, no drug can heal. Only one thing and one thing alone can heal, and that is the human body. It was created by God to be able to heal itself. And so the million-dollar question is, why are so many people sick? In Australia, and perhaps here in America, are our hospitals getting bigger and bigger? In fact, you call it ER, emergency, casualty. In Australia, the average wait in emergency is 8 hours. The nurses are run off their feet. And when I did a skydive with my daughter, a few years ago now, I didn't land right. And I was taken to hospital, and I had cracked one of my bones. But as I laid on the bed in casualty, waiting for the doctor to have a look at me, I looked at all the people around and their complaints, and I thought they just need a poultice, and they just need a bit of charcoal, and they just need... And while I was there, a phone call came through, and I heard the nurse say, yes, it is usual to vomit when you're drunk. Yes. Ringing up casualty for that? And that's when it was certainly confirmed to me, so many people are sick through ignorance. They don't realise the simple conditions that the body requires to heal itself. You see, drugs never cure disease, they just change the form and location of the disease. Absolutely, in a crisis, a drug can save a life, absolutely. I'm so glad there's something called anaesthetic. So that if a bone needs to be set or something major's happened, praise God for that. So I am not against drugs, because in a crisis they can save a life. But what I am against is that they're used day to day to day for simple things that the body has the ability to heal itself if given the right conditions. So the million-dollar question is, why are so many people sick? And as we just looked at, it's because they don't know the right conditions. We should all be private investigators, because in case of sickness, the little book Ministry of Healing by Ellen White, I love this sentence. She says, in case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. And there's only one way you will ascertain the cause, and that is through a bit of detective work. Rudyard Kipling wrote a whole poem on this. Let me give you the first stanza. I have 6 trusty serving men. They taught me all I know. Their names are what, why, when, where, how, and who. Do you have your 6 trusty serving men? Do you take them everywhere you go? And if your specialist gets annoyed at all your questions, rise, politely excuse yourself, and leave the room and don't pay the bill. We, the consumer, have power. I was consulting with a man in Melbourne not long ago, and I said, what do you do for a job? He said, I'm a private investigator. I said, so am I. And it always amazes me, in Australia we have Medicare, and oh dear, is that abused. But the doctor is only allowed to spend 15 minutes per patient. And unfortunately in Australia, doctors are losing their qualifications because they're spending too much time with patients and suggesting natural therapies. Isn't that incredible? And you're probably aware that I have a ban on me that I am not allowed to speak. If I give any health advice, 12 months jail. Oh, you think Australia is the land of the free? No, no, no. Someone's getting worried. Well, I think it's the biggest and the most powerful company in the world. What would that be? Yeah, there was a quick answer to that one. What do they call it? Big Pharma. No, the body was designed to heal itself. So I'd like to investigate a little bit further. What are the two main theories in medicine today as to why people get sick? The germ theory, it's not me, it's the germ. And the gene theory, notice with that one, it's not me, it's my genes. With both of those theories, it takes away all responsibility on the person for what is happening in their body. One lady emailed me from Africa. She had quite a bad wound. I said, rinse it with seawater and put it in the sun. How simple is that? How much does that cost? She said, I haven't put it in the sun because the germs in the air might get in the wound. Now that's a total misunderstanding of so-called germs or bacteria. And I want to address that this morning. But the first one I want to address is the other theory, the genes. Where I'd like to go right now is to the CBD of the human body, which is the inside workings of the cell. We're going to go into the cell every day, but today I want to go to the very nucleus of the cell, and in the very nucleus of the cell is the DNA. And the DNA is the genetic code that determines the colour of our hair, the colour of our skin, the colour of our eyes, our height. I was in Tennessee about 1.5 years ago, and I'm always intrigued as to who's going to pick me up because I never know. And so I stand at the airport and I just watch and I just look at people, and if I see someone looking at me smiling, it's usually them. And there was a man in a rocking chair and he was looking at me smiling. I went straight over. He said, Sister Barbara. I said, that's right. And then he stood and he stood and he stood. 6'10". Whoa, we've got 23 chromosomes from our mother and 23 chromosomes from our father. And his son is 6'6". So how come he's not 6'10"? Well, he has a mother who's 5'3". And don't we do it with each other? We do it with our brothers, our sisters, our relatives, our kids. Oh, she's got her mother's nose on, she's got her father's legs. It's a very interesting thing. When I was in Fiji, some of my Fijian friends, they're very dark skinned, and they said, well, you will think this story is interesting. It was probably 150 years ago. We've got relatives that one's white and one's black. Our great-great-grandfather was from up in the interior, big, strong Fijian man who used to come down and work on the wharfs, lifting the heavy crates. And he met a little white lady, and her father owned the trading shop there. Well, they ran off together, and they ran off into the interior, and you know, they never saw her again. And they said, she looked like you. They lighter hair and blue eyes. She said, every now and then a white kid pops out. And sometimes it can be a couple of generations later. A lot of information in the DNA. If you were to put all the information that is in the DNA into alphabetical language and put it into paperback books and stuck them on top of one another, it would go to the moon and back a few times. I can hardly get my mind around that information. And the psalmist declares, I will praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvellous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. That's Psalm 139, verse 14. And that psalmist did not know what I'm telling you today. The DNA is made up of the food that we eat. The outside strands is made up of polysaccharides. Polysaccharides simply means many sugars. And everything we eat is made up of many sugars. The juice you had for breakfast this morning is made up of many sugars. The crossword bands is made up of amino acids, and amino acids is a breakdown from the protein that we eat. And the glue that glues these two together is minerals. The food that is the highest in minerals is vegetables, and the vegetable that is the highest in minerals is greens. Every evening we serve you broth, and in that broth there's a lot of vegetables, a lot of greens, and they all break down and the minerals go into the water. We strain it and then you drink the minerals, because every day you'll be having a sauna and you'll be sweating out a lot of waste, and we'll be talking about that in my next lecture. And we need to replace those minerals, otherwise you might get cramps in the night. Whether you eat vegetables raw or cooked, they've all got the minerals. The only time you won't get the cooked vegetable minerals if you throw the water out that you cook them in. Hippocrates, he said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. And he didn't know what I've just shown you there, that our very DNA is made up of the food that we eat. We are constantly being remade. Eye cells are remade every 1 to 2 days. That's why if you have eye surgery, it's often day surgery. The next quickest are the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract. Tonight, I'm going to take you on a journey at 7 o'clock through your gastrointestinal tract. We're going to start at the mouth and we're going to go all the way through, about 8 meters it is, and come out the other end. And it's a fascinating process. And tonight I'll go into detail on the lining of the gut. But basically the lining of the gut looks like this. It's lined with villi. The new cell starts down here, it travels up and away it goes every 3 to 5 days. So the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract, they're remade every 3 to 5 days. So how come someone with irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, colitis, how come they don't heal in, let's be generous and say 2 weeks? Is that a reasonable question? I'd like to suggest it's very reasonable. And as we looked at previously, they don't heal because they don't know the conditions that that gut requires to heal. And we'll look at those conditions tonight. We have a new skin every month. Do you wonder where the old skin goes? This is one of the reasons we get you to rub the Epsom salts crystals into your skin in the sauna every day, because it rubs off those dead skin. And isn't that why we wash our clothes and wash our sheets and wash our bodies every day? Because we're constantly throwing off dead skin. We've got a new liver about every 6 weeks. Your bones, it's about every 3 months. We're constantly being remade according to the pattern, according to the formula in the DNA. So if that is true, how come people aren't healing? I'd like to have a look at that. I'd like to have a look at what damages the DNA, because the fact is, damage is happening to the DNA. So let me show you by showing you how a new cell is made. So we're going to make a new gastrointestinal tract cell. Remember, they're remade every 3 to 5 days. DNA has all the information on how to make a new gastrointestinal tract cell, but we don't want the information on how to make a new eye cell or liver cell. So all that information is switched off and the information we want is switched on. A photocopy is made. It's called RNA. Even though the DNA can be pulled out and curled back in again, it can't leave. And so a photocopy is made called RNA, and it travels down to another section of the cell called ribosome. And ribosome is the little factory where the new cell is made. Science shows us today that there's a literal city inside that cell. There are conveyor belts, there are outboard motors. Did you know that Darwin stated that his theory rested on what they would find out on the inside workings of the cell? In fact, what they know about the inside of working of the cell totally refutes his theory. But have you heard that? Unfortunately not. So the RNA comes down to ribosome and the new cell is made. I'm going to explain it like the building of a brick wall. The first brick goes down, and the first brick, we're built up by amino acids. The first brick, maybe it's tyrosine. The next brick is, maybe it's phenylalanine. The next brick is, maybe it's methionine. The next brick is lysine. Notice what's happening here. Every brick is a certain shape, and it fits into the next brick like a piece of jigsaw. And every 3 to 5 days, out pops a new gastrointestinal tract cell. What about an irritable bowel syndrome cell? Let's have a look. A photocopy is made of all information. It comes down to ribosome, the little factory where the new cell is made. The first brick goes down. Maybe it's tyrosine. It's ready, time for the next brick to go down, but we've got a problem. There's a piece of information missing. The body says, what are we going to do now? What do we put in there now? I knew a lady that used to make a lovely cake, and everyone wanted the recipe, and she would give the recipe out, but she would leave one piece out. So no one could make her cake. I think it's a bit silly myself. You've got to, the formula's not right, it cannot be made right. Michael and I have 4 sons and 4 daughters. We've got landscapers and tilers and builders and carpenters. Before they build, before they landscape, what do first? Make a plan. And it's exactly the same with the working of the human body. There is a plan, it is in the DNA. But we've got a problem, there's a piece of information missing. Now there are rogue cells in every body. These rogue cells are a breakdown from chemicals, environmental poison exposure, heavy metals, genetically modified foods, electromagnetic field excess, anything that causes a disruption in the body can create molecules that the body doesn't know. And it's always looking for somewhere to poke itself because there's nowhere really for it to fit, and in it goes. Now it's time for phenylalanine. Maybe that was. Maybe we're up to methionine. Where does it go? Where's its docking station? It's not there. So it does the best it can. And now we've got another problem. The person's mineral deficient. And so it doesn't stick together properly. And now we've got another problem. There's another piece of information missing. And there's plenty of rogue cells always looking for somewhere to poke themselves, and every 3 to 5 days out pops a new irritable bowel syndrome cell. No wonder people are not healing. The very DNA has been damaged and it's not got the right message. So the $1 million question is, why the damage? Why the damage? The Proverbs 26 verse 2 states that the curse causeless shall not come. In other words, no problem happens without a cause. So let's have a look at what causes the damage in the DNA. 92% of DNA damage, the research is showing today, is caused by a mineral deficiency. A mineral deficiency? I'm sure no one living in Eden Valley has a mineral deficiency. Have you seen the garden? And for plants to grow like that, the soil must be good. And for the soil to be good, it must be fed. The problem today, and this is the current figures, you'll find these figures in a few places, but the book The Calcium Lie by Dr. Robert Thompson, he shows that 50 years ago there was twice as many minerals in the soil as there is today. How so? Well, unfortunately in Australia, and I think it does happen in America too, the same crop is put in the same ground year after year after year. And the soil is not fed. Superphosphate's put in. What does superphosphate do? It creates show ponies of vegetables. Looks good, doesn't taste any good. Have you ever eaten an apple off a tree? Have you ever eaten a strawberry straight out of a plant? Well, did you taste those tomatoes yesterday? Tomatoes, you say. They were straight off the vine. The flavour was intense. I was at my daughter's place last week and she bought some tomatoes. I took one bite and I just pushed it to the side. I couldn't eat it. It's very hard to eat food like that when you've eaten food like this. Sorry, we're going to spoil you this week. The food you're going to have is going to be phenomenal. But I'm so glad for places like Trader Joe's, Sprout, Whole Foods, you can buy organic. When you buy organic, the flavour is so much better because what you're tasting is minerals. Now, obviously, if someone's going to live at Burger King or the fast food shops, they're going to be mineral deficient. But we've got a lot of people today who are eating fruits and vegetables and they are still mineral deficient because the foods they're eating are deficient. If the soil's deficient, the plant will be deficient, and the person that eats that food will be, it'll be deficient. That's true. Something else is happening too. People are taking things into their body that are leaching the minerals. Stimulants. And we've got a whole nation of people today who aren't sleeping well. And I think there's a couple of thousand people on the hill over there. Did you hear them last night? Is the Pope a Catholic? I'm lying there thinking, I'll just pretend it's birds in the background or something. And it was 10 o'clock and it was pretty noisy. And I don't know what time, you know, you've dozed in and out of sleep. But did you hear the sirens? Sirens came past and I thought, oh, sirens. 5 minutes later, total silence. Total silence. So this, you know, maybe they got to bed at 12, maybe they got to bed at 1, I don't know. Because I was talking to someone else and they reckon the music started up again. I don't know, I was off in La La Land. Don't you love La La Land? Do you say that in America? And so I'm running up and down doing my high intensity next to the canal this morning and there wasn't a sound coming out of that camp. Not a sound, not a sound. And most of those people, when they wake up, they're not going to feel real good, are they? So what are they going to do to give that little pick-me-up? They'll have coffee. One lady said, I need my coffee to get me going in the morning. You know what I now ask? Why do you need something to get you going? Is it because you went to bed too late? Is it because you're sleeping with a Christmas tree of lights around your bed called technology? Is it because your pillow's mouldy? Is it because you ate last night? You've got to become private investigators, because when we wake up in the morning, we should wake up with a spark. It's like when I woke my little 9-year-old granddaughter up. She wanted to come walking with me. I said, Amy, we're going now. And she woke up, jumped up, and she said, oh, silly me, I've been sleeping my head off. She had instant spark. And you might say, well, that's because she's 9. No. That spark should be in every single person. And if you don't have it, you've got to begin to investigate. And the best person to investigate is the one in the mirror. So coffee is high in caffeine, so we can say everything that contains caffeine. Now what that does is, as you'll see in a later lecture, it interferes with the neurotransmitters in the brain. And that's why you get the spark, but then there's the corresponding dump. Because it interferes with the neurotransmitters in the brain, if someone's continually having it, it starts to interfere with the DNA making of the neurotransmitters. So you can have a couple having a cup of coffee every day, maybe the lady has a chocolate, maybe the guy has, you call it Dr. Pepper, or I've discovered, well, I haven't ever had it or seen it, but I'm told Mountain Dew. We don't have that in Australia, and we don't have Dr. Pepper, but we certainly have Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So these drinks are combinations of 2 main stimulants, which is caffeine, and the other one is sugar. Stimulants, yeah, they do stimulate. But what we are never told is what it's doing to the DNA. So you can have a couple doing that, and they can give birth to a baby that is prone to attention deficit syndrome, hyperactivity, because they're born with damaged DNA to their neurotransmitters in the brain. They don't tell you that on the packet, does it? No. Not only that, what the caffeine does is it leaches minerals out of the body. Similar to sugar, sugar leaches minerals. In fact, one writer said that sugar leaves your body better dressed than when it went in. It goes in naked and it comes out dressed with your minerals. No wonder osteoporosis is almost epidemic proportions in America and Australia. Bones are breaking down because of the stimulants that are leaching the minerals out of the body, and the food itself is deficient. Remember what minerals do? It just glues us together. It's absolutely essential for life. Sugar also damages the DNA. It causes a quick high, then the body has to release a lot of insulin to get it down again, then the person needs a lift, so they have another bit of sugar, then it gets up again, and it's this whiplash, constant whiplash, called diabetes. We had a lady do our program with her 9-year-old daughter. The 9-year-old daughter had type 1 diabetes, I consulted with the daughter, then I consulted with the mother. And the little girl kept saying, "Mum, tell her." Now this lady was almost as wide as she was tall. She was about my height. And the mother looked embarrassed, and the little girl, you know, they say out of the mouths of babes, is that right? "Mum, tell her." And then the little girl went, "Oh, she eats a bag of lollies," or you call them candies, yeah? "Mum eats a bag of candies a day." The mother looked very embarrassed. And as you'll see tomorrow, that high sugar, it stores as fat. And how many people take fat-free lollies thinking they'll lose weight when they're actually putting on this terrible form of fat? That mother, and of course, how can I tell her? And I don't have to because the lectures tell her. Her addiction to candy meant that she gave her daughter a damaged DNA towards the pancreatic gene. Yeah. It doesn't tell you that on the sugar packet either. It doesn't tell you that on all the candies that you buy. So both of these damage the DNA in different ways, but they also leach the minerals out of the body. What can also leach minerals is alcohol. There is no safe dose of alcohol. It's a toxic poison. We're getting children born today with fetal alcohol syndrome to parents that have 2 drinks a week because of the damage done to the DNA. But alcohol also leaches the minerals out of the body. Any poison that goes into your body, the body has to give up some of its minerals to calm it down so it doesn't totally kill you. And also tobacco. We're getting children born today with less alveoli in their lungs. Holes in the honeycomb shape around the alveoli. Those children can develop emphysema without ever having smoked. My auntie died at 69 with lung cancer, never smoked in her life, but her husband of 25 years smoked constantly. And it was in the days where the ashtrays were in the bedroom, the ashtrays were at the table. He'd finish his meal and light up at the table. Whew. He lived till he was 80. He was the smoker. The passive smoke killed him. We're looking at what causes damage to the DNA, genetically modified foods. Genetically modified foods is a combination of the DNA of 2 different species being spliced together. Maybe the DNA of an Atlantic salmon, the DNA of a tomato, hoping to create a tomato that will grow in the snow, but it doesn't. And that tomato has 5 centers. And that tomato it breaks down in the body to molecules that your body cannot recognize. Unfortunately, Monsanto is so big and so powerful that every court case in America and Australia trying to get it put onto the food package, they win every court case. So how do you know if it's genetically modified or not? You actually really don't, unless you buy organic. An organic farmer does not use genetically modified seed. Also, electromagnetic field excess. We are electrical people. And this electromagnetic field from the technology disrupts our electromagnetic field. Underneath those huge big electrical tower, the farmer knows that if his cows or sheep graze under there, then the calf or the lamb, sometimes stillborn, sometimes they're deformed. We lived in a rainforest for many years, and way up the back on the big hills were big electrical towers, and my children used to go up because underneath the towers they'd find all this mutation in plant life. They'd find everlasting daisies with 5 centers. They used to say, "Mom, look at this. What's doing that?" Underneath those towers is about 500 times the electromagnetic field usually found on the planet. So let's bring it a little closer to home. Let's look at our technology. Be very careful of your exposure to electromagnetic field. We should sleep in an electromagnetic field free zone. So if you've got to charge your phone, do it in the next room. Do it in the bathroom. And the current figures are 80% of Americans sleep with their phones. and the pillow doesn't protect you. I know in Australia, I know the Australian figures for suicide in adolescents and teenagers is 6 a day. That's 42 a week. That's incredible, isn't it? It's not in any newspaper. They don't want to give young people any ideas. I think it's a few factors, but I believe this electromagnetic field exposure is one of the factors. How many young people sleep with their phones? I was reading an article by a breast surgeon, and he said, we're shocked at how many young women are getting breast cancer, and they're getting it in the breast where they put the phone in their bra. You can even buy a sports bra now with a pocket in it. And you know the worst place to put your laptop? On your lap. Guard the family jewels, ladies and gentlemen, because it's affecting. They're finding girls that have laptops on their laps, 10, 12, 14, 16. Let's fast forward to when they're 30, 47% miscarriage in those girls because it was interfering with the development of their eggs at that age. Whew. So be very careful of your exposure. It has the ability to certainly tamper with your DNA. Also chemicals. We've got to get the chemicals out of our homes, out of our clothes, out of our food, out of our shampoo, out of our toothpaste. Little, by like the dripping tap of a stone, on a stone, are these things eating away at the proper function of the DNA, eating away at cellular function. We've got a book in Australia, I don't know if you have it here, it's called Chemical Maze. And this little book, Chemical Maze, it shows you what all the letters mean, what all the words mean. In fact, the bigger the word, the scarier it is that right? And we'll look at this a little bit later, but in Australia, there is a myth, and there are many myths, and we're going to be looking at a lot of myths this week, that the sun causes skin cancer. Have you heard that myth? And so what people are doing now, they think the sun's the enemy. They don't even go out in the sun. So now we've got another problem. It's called vitamin D deficiency. The darker the skin, the more sun that you need. And the darker the skin, the more sun you can bear. One lady said, I can only go out in the skin for, in 10 minutes I get burnt. I said, well, go out in for 5 minutes. You see, you just do it little by little. And so when Michael and I were in Bali about a year ago having a holiday, I'd go down every morning by the pool, and I didn't have sunscreen, I took my watch. 15 minutes front, 15 minutes back, under the umbrella. Is that common sense? You know it's not very common today. And within a week I had a tan. So I don't know what the figures are for you. If you've got dark skin, it's probably half our front, half our back. And I mention this because sunscreens have a lot of chemicals in them. You've heard of the Great Barrier Reef, one of the wonders of the world? You have to go 5 kilometres out to see the Great Barrier Reef today. 50 years ago, you could see it off the shore. It's sunscreens. Aussies cover themselves in sunscreen and then dive in the ocean. And those sunscreens are going into those corals and killing the corals. But the biggest chemical company in the world is the pharmaceutical company. Drugs are chemicals. Drugs never cure disease, they change the form and location of disease. If you are on medication, there is some medication that can be stopped, but there is some medication you have to ease off it slowly. And we can advise with that. Only 2 people have authority over your medication, you and your doctor. I will not tell you what to do, but I will tell you what I would do. Also mold. Mold has the ability to tamper with the DNA. If you have a look at mold in nature, you see the lichen, it splices into the DNA of the tree to reproduce itself. And mold is one of many microorganisms. So we're going to take a minute to have a look at the germ theory, microorganisms. Microorganisms are everywhere. They're in the air that we breathe. they're in our food, they're on our skin. There are 10 times more microorganisms in our body than cells, and we have 100 trillion cells. And there are 10 times more microorganisms in the gastrointestinal tract than anywhere else in the body. And we're going to have a look at those little creepy crawlies in our gut tonight. They're everywhere. And they are an important part of life on planet Earth. But whenever cell damage happens, these microorganisms have the ability to change roles. We change roles. We change roles all through life. And we change roles according to the environment. When I left home, it was very, very cold and there was frost on the ground. I live halfway down Australia, so in the summer it's hot and in the winter it's cold. Top of Australia, no winter. It's always hot. Down the bottom of Australia, a lot colder. Similar to America, but the other way around because we're on the southern part of the hemisphere. So when I left home, I had my boots on, I had my woolen stockings, I had a thick skirt, and I had my possum and wool jumper on. You call it a sweater, is that right? Now that outfit is staying at my daughter's house because I will not need it here, will I? You see, we all change roles according to the environment. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed running up hills this morning. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed in bed sleeping last night. I'm not dressed now the way I'm dressed if I'm digging in the garden. We change roles, so do the microbes. So whenever cell damage happens, these microbes change roles. They now become the clean-up team, or as one microbiologist said to me, he said, we call it the garbage collectors. That's what it is, that's what it does. They're garbage collectors. Their name is bacteria. That's what bacteria is, that's what it does. It's the clean-up team. And the more damage, the more waste, the more bacteria, is that right? Florence Nightingale, very famous nurse. She was asked to go to Scutari in 1854 because the hospital in Scutari, its death rate for the soldiers that went there was 50%. Now the soldiers were coming from Crimea, where the Crimea War was happening. The British and the French were fighting the Russians. The wounded were put in boats and they were put on the Black Sea and they sailed down to Scutari where the hospital was. Now a journalist went to the hospital to report on the war effort. He was shocked at what he found. So he went back to England and he wrote an article in the newspaper, headlines, "Did we raise our young men to rot like this?" Well, the British government quickly rose up, got Florence and 35 nurses to go to that hospital to see what they could do, or what she could do. When she arrived, she was shocked at the conditions. Raw sewage was in the corridors. She found a man who was still in his battle clothes 2 weeks after he'd been admitted. The doctors were not washing their hands between operations. They thought our hands are already covered in blood. They're just going to be covered in blood with the next one. Florence Nightingale immediately telegrammed London. She said, you need to set up a sanitary commission to come and assess this situation. There's a crisis here. She also telegrammed her father, who was a very wealthy Englishman. She said, I need a shipload of clean linen, clean bandages, clean mattresses. She said, scrubbing brush and a cook. You cannot heal without nourishment. And the food was big vats of water with bits of rotten meat in it. In fact, I'm shocked that the death rate wasn't 80%. In fact, a lot of the young men didn't even survive the boat trip, especially if there was a storm brewing. Florence Nightingale immediately began scrubbing. The Sanitary Commission came along and this is what they discovered. The hospital was built in a swamp and there was a dead horse in the water and there was a dead dog in the water and the men in the hospital were drinking that water and they were bathing the wounds in that water. Ooh. You know, there's been a death and no one attended the funeral because no one knew he'd died. It was the death of common sense. Where is it? Huh? How come Florence knew about strict cleanliness and the doctors didn't? She read her Bible. Have you ever read in Leviticus the cleanliness rules that God gave the Israelites in the desert? If someone died, the people that carried the person outside the camp to bury them could not come back into the camp for 3 days. They had to wash their clothes. They had to wash their bodies. And the record is, in 40 years, there was no sickness in that camp. And if someone wanted to go to the bathroom, they had to go outside the camp, dig a hole, bury it, and no one was to know that anything had happened. Strict cleanliness rules. So they got rid of the dead horse and the dead dog. They started boiling the water. They got some drainage happening. They fixed up the sewage system. Meanwhile, Florence and her nurses are scrubbing inside the hospital, cleaning up the patients and the ward, and doctors hated her. She made them wash their hands between operations. Within 6 months, the death rate went from 50% to 2%. Now, that's phenomenal. We cannot forget Florence Nightingale. I don't think the pharmaceutical company will ever allow a movie to be made on her. Or if it is, it probably won't quite be the truth. When Florence came back to London, they hailed her as a heroine. Oh, how they loved her. This was their son. When she saw that she was being hailed as a heroine, she changed her name to Mary Smith, went down the back gangplank and went home. They said to her later, "Why did you do that?" She said, "I'm not a heroine. All I did was increase hygiene, sanitation and nutrition." Hygiene, that's personal hygiene. Clean the body, clean the clothes. Sanitation, clean the house, empty the garbage, clean the shower. Because if you don't, who's going to start living there? Just common sense, isn't it? And nutrition. You cannot heal without nutrition, as you can see by the DNA. Let me show you a graph. It is because of this graph that I think I have a ban on me. I'm telling you the truth here, and you can read this in the Bureau of Statistics. You can see these graphs in medical journals. All the childhood illnesses, mumps, measles, rubella, diphtheria, whooping cough, polio, all 90% wiped out, and then were introduced. Now, we are not told that. We are told that it was because of that there is a drop in all those illnesses. But it is not true. So why was there a drop? Florence Nightingale. Her reforms of hygiene, sanitation and nutrition. Did you know that in the 1850s all the sewage from London went into the Thames, and the people living in London drank the water out of the Thames? No wonder the Black Plague happened. Huh? Notice there's no Black Plague anymore, no smallpox outbreaks. It's not because of It's because of an increase in hygiene, sanitation and nutrition. And doesn't that make sense? We've got another graph today. Attention deficit syndrome, hyperactivity, Asperger's, autism, epilepsy, cot death. Children are not dying of infectious diseases today. They're dying of neurological diseases. 70 years ago, 1 in 10,000 children were autistic. Today, it's 1 in 45. So what is causing that? It is these with their neurotoxins and the cost of the government on the care of these children. But the pharmaceutical company is so big. What about polio? Surely the wiped out polio? No, it didn't. Let me give you the truth on polio. There was no polio in London, in England, until they started using DDT as a herbicide and putting lead and arsenic in paint. So with the use of paint with arsenic and lead and using DDT, polio arose. Use polio. Eventually someone put 2 and 2 together, so they stopped putting arsenic and lead in the paint, they stopped using DDT, and guess what happened to polio? Polio was wiped out. 90% wiped out before the was introduced. the environment changes, so do the microbes. They now become the exterminators. What are the exterminators? Their name is yeast and fungus. We see them very busy on the rainforest floor. As the environment changes, so do the microbes. They now become the undertakers. What are the undertakers? Their name is mould. And it's not long after the mould stage that the matter is now brought back to dust. And what does the preacher say at the funeral? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. He's referring to what's about to happen in the coffin. The dead body will be brought back to dust. What I've drawn for you here is the cycle of life, or often called the carbon cycle. And a basic law of science states nothing's created and nothing's destroyed. It just changes form. Isn't that why we have compost bins? We have compost bins to bring the matter back to dust. Let me show you what happens there. Antoine Beauchamp, 6 times professor, this man, a contemporary at the time of Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur was a chemist. He was a socialite. He used to call the media to every experiment and how everyone loved his theory. You poor thing, you are sick because a germ has made you sick. Take this poison to kill the germ and all will be better. No one liked what Beauchamp said. He said diseases are born in us and of us. He said germs don't cause disease, they're the result of unhealthful conditions. He said, start going to bed early, stop drinking so much alcohol, start eating some nourishing food. Well, no one wanted to hear that. They wanted to hear Pasteur's theory. And Florence Nightingale, when she read of Louis Pasteur's theory, she said, this is the theory of a man of a very unstable mind. And anyone who believes it is equally unstable because germs don't cause disease, they're the result. All Florence Nightingale did was she just cleaned up the place so there was nothing for these, nowhere for them to live because they're just opportunist organisms. That's what they are. One day Antoine Beauchamp got a dead cat. He put it in an airtight container, came back 4 months later, opened the container, dust, maybe a few bones. What brought cat back to dust? Well, in Australia we've got dung beetles, we've got worms, we've got blowflies with maggots, we've got the dingoes that'll have a nibble, we've got the kookaburra and the crow that'll have a nibble. But he did it in an airtight container. It was the microbes, the microorganisms that were an integral part of living, running cat. Upon death of the organism, they took their suit of clothes off, so to speak, put their rubber gloves and apron on, and became the clean-up team. As the environment changed, the exterminators. As the environment changed, the undertakers, until eventually they had brought cat back to dust. It's the cycle of life. Antoine Beauchamp got the dust, put it under a microscope. It was alive with microorganisms. Now they're waiting for their next job. They can lay dormant. He went to the tombs in Egypt, got the dust, put it under the microscope, alive with microbes. Isn't that why we have compost bins? Let me show you what happens when you put compost in the garden. Here are the roots of the plant. I put compost in. When I put compost in, I'm putting a lot of microbes. Because those microbes, you have a look at the apple. The apple tree develops a blossom in spring under the action of microbes. Then it develops the apple under the action of the microbes. But the apple is not ready to eat. It's too bitter. It's got to ripen. What ripens the apple? The same microbes. They just change roles according to the environment. No one eats the apple, so what happens to the apple? It rots under the action of the same microbes. They just change roles according to the environment. So what do these microbes do in the soil? They are responsible for the breakdown of the minerals in the soil. Because if you and I eat dirt, we won't get the minerals. What the microbes do is they break down the minerals and then they cause them to be absorbed, absorption into the plant, and then we eat the plant. And we ate those lovely greens yesterday and that lovely tomato. Now that plant knows it needs the microbes, so 50% of the fuel that it makes from photosynthesis, it sends back down to the microbes. It basically says, please stay, I'll feed you well. Because that plant knows that it needs the microbes for its nourishment. It's called the law of life, and the law of life is written on every plant. And the law of life is the law of service. You have a look at that apple tree. Everything it does is just to produce apples for you and me. The law of life states that we take with one purpose, and that is to give. These microbes are also responsible for protecting the plant against harmful pathogens. These microbes are also an important part of the nourishment of the plant. That's why organically grown fruits and vegetables have a far higher content, because the organic farmer works with the soil and encourages the microbes in the soil. I want to take it somewhere now that you may have never taken it before, and we're going to look at this in more detail tonight. When we are in our mother's uterus, we have no microbes in our gut. When we are born, we're literally showered with our mother's microbes. And the first 3 days, that thick colostrum that's in a woman's breasts is rich with microbes. And when they come into the baby's gut, they form a thick turf wall over the gut. You have a look at this. Here are the roots of the plant. Roots of the plant. Here is the villi lining our gut, very similar. Now, that thick turf wall is responsible for the final breakdown of our food. It's responsible for the absorption of our food. It's responsible for protecting the blood in the villi from any harmful pathogens that may be in the gut. Those microbes are responsible for nourishing the little cells that line the gut. No wonder Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the guts. Because there are many drugs and things today that break down that lining of the gut. And we're going to look at that in more detail tonight when we take our journey through the gastrointestinal tract. Are you starting to see that these microbes are not our enemy? Are you starting to see that they are an integral part of life on planet Earth? And to understand how the body heals, it is absolutely essential. It is of the essence that we understand the role of microbes on planet Earth. So the lady that had the wound, put it in the sun. Because disease is more born in us than of us. It's better for her to put it in the sun and stop her coffee and her Dr. Pepper and go to bed early and eat nourishing food, because the healer in the human body is the blood. I remember my daughter Jessica, when she was 14, she tripped and she scraped her shin. And I could tell how much water she was drinking by what that wound was doing. She woke up one morning and it was all swollen. It had scabbed, and I said, how much water did you drink yesterday afternoon? And she went, Another day she woke up and it was nice and flat and healing nicely. I said, you drank water yesterday afternoon, didn't you? She said, yes. Can you see? It's what we're doing to our body that causes the healing. It comes from the inside, not the outside. Dr. Walker, a very famous doctor from about the 50s, who wrote a lot of books on juicing, he went to live in a leper colony to prove that he would not get leprosy because his body was so high in nourishment. It's so much easier to blame the genes or to blame the germ rather than have a look at what's happening in our body. I trust you're looking a little differently at microorganisms. If you think about it, if it wasn't for the microbes, there'd be so much rubbish on the planet, we wouldn't be able to walk on the planet. In fact, I think in America you call it trash, is that right? We don't call it trash in Australia, we call it rubbish. When I was a nurse, I didn't live a very good life, and I'd often get bronchitis. You see, I'd got bronchitis as a child. And whenever I got bronchitis, my mother would take me to the doctor. He would give me some cherry-flavoured syrup, and I would have to take a spoonful 3 times a day. What was that? It was an antibiotic. And they had a lot of sugar in it so that I'd eat it. And you know what sugar does? It kills off our white blood cells, which are an important part of our internal army. Why was I getting bronchitis? I realise now I had a dairy allergy. That's one of the most common causes of a child having bronchitis, ear problems, asthma, is an allergy to dairy. So then I'm nursing, I'm not living or eating very well, and I get bronchitis. I start coughing up yellow lumps, so I go straight to the doctor. He gives me antibiotics. And within a few days, I'm feeling a little better. What is an antibiotic? Alexander Fleming, 1929, he's growing bacteria in flasks in his laboratory. He comes in one morning and all his bacteria is dead. And he knew Newton's third law of motion: to every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Why was his bacteria dead? He began to investigate around, couldn't see anything that might have done it. He noticed that near the bacteria in its flasks there was an open window. The sun was shining in because it was early morning, and there was a heavy dust on the rays of sun coming in and settling on his bacteria. He began to investigate more, and he found that the dust was coming from the next story. There was an open window, and in the open window there was a plate of fruit. In the plate of fruit there was a mouldy orange, and the dust was coming from the mouldy orange down, settling on his bacteria and killing it. He called the mould penicillium. He called the mould waste penicillic acid, and that penicillic acid is the penicillin that we know today. They were so excited about the discovery of penicillin, they tested hundreds of different mould wastes. 80% of them were so deadly they killed the rats they were tested on. Penicillin is not deadly enough to kill you outright, but it can certainly contribute to that process in the body. To date, they have documented 1.5 million different molds, yeasts and funguses, and 1,000 of those are known to cause disease in mankind. 1% of doctors today are claiming that antibiotics are causing more problems than they ever cured. What are they referring to? They're referring to the mold aspect of disease. And there are several books that talk about it today. I have a couple of books in my library at home. One's called Cancer is a Fungus. Now that's pretty clear, isn't it? Cancer is a Fungus. It's by a Dr. Tullio Simoncini. He was getting 90% success rate with cancer. What was he doing? He would inject sodium bicarbonate straight into the cancer. You see, cancer and fungus both love an acid environment, and sodium bicarbonate injected in neutralizes it. In fact, it gives a wave of alkalinity that it cannot survive. So surely he's received a Nobel Prize for that. Did you know that on the board that awards Nobel Prizes are representatives from the pharmaceutical companies? Can you make money out of sodium bicarbonate? No, he's actually lost all his qualifications, and at the moment he's up on a charge of manslaughter. And one of the complaints against me is I'm quoting a doctor who is up on the charge of manslaughter. Yeah. You see, cancer and fungus both love acid environments, and sodium bicarbonate gives a wave of alkalinity to it. I have several books at home. In fact, I have about 10 books. They cost me about $2,000 altogether, but I wanted these books as resource material for my book, which is called Self-Heal by Design. It's sold in the bookshelf. on the bookshop, your nature country store shop. I wanted a book that you could read in a day. I wanted a book that had it all in a nutshell. In fact, when someone goes on and on about something, we call it waffle. There's no waffle in my book. It's straight to the point. So my book is an expansion of this lecture that I'm giving you today. So the million-dollar question is now, how do we get it out of the body? There are 4 ways that fungus can come into your body. One is you can breathe it in. Another is that you can eat it in, so you can take it in. You will find out tonight, if you eat, say, blue vein cheese, and what's the blue? Mold. If someone eats blue vein cheese and they have very strong hydrochloric acid, it can wipe it out. But not a lot of people today have hydrochloric acid. In fact, there's a chapter in my book called The Stomach's Secret Weapon, hydrochloric acid. You can take it in through your skin, so never touch anything mouldy, and it can also be sexually transmitted. In fact, most sexually transmitted diseases are a fungal base. Dr. Holland, who wrote the book, The Germ That Causes Cancer, I think it's out of print now. You can try it on Amazon. It's written by Doug Kaufman, who's a medical journalist. And Dr. Holland was asked, are you saying that fungus or mold causes most diseases? He said, no. All diseases. All diseases have a fungal link. So the million-dollar question then is, why is it out of control in the body? But I think an even more important question is, how do we get it out of the body? Number 1, starve it. And what's its favourite food? Sugar. Are the yeasts. So when someone comes to me wanting help to conquer cancer, we put them on a fruit-free diet for 6 weeks. No sweet at all. Definitely no sweeteners. What do they eat? Lots of vegetables. Every meal is like the meal we ate yesterday. That wouldn't be hard, would it? There's so many different legumes. You could have a different legume every meal for about 4 days and still not double up. Lots of vegetables, nuts and seeds. You've also got to have a look at your house. Make sure there is no mold at all in your house. It is toxic stuff. In fact, what medicine calls mold waste, it's called a mycotoxin. What's a toxin? It's a poison. I'm shocked at how many have ignorance on the mold aspect of disease. And I think one of the reasons medicine doesn't acknowledge it is because some of its most popular drugs put it into you. What's that? The antibiotic. I'm not against antibiotics, they can save a life. But the human body can only cope with about 2 courses in a lifetime. Did you hear that? 2 courses in a lifetime. But most people should go through their whole life never having them. They should be kept as life-saving. When I went to the doctor recently, which is a very rare thing for me to do because I'd been duck diving. You know duck diving, going under the sea in Fiji, and my ears got blocked. I couldn't unblock them. I was putting hot coconut oil and I was putting hydrogen peroxide, but I wasn't accounting for another element. It's called patience. So I went to the doctor and said, have a look in, what's going on in there? She said, yes, the wax has dried. Keep doing what you're doing, come back in a week. We've got this great little machine that'll pump water in and it'll clear it out. But I noticed when I was there was a big notice on the desk. It said the biggest healthcare risk or hazard in the world today is antibiotic resistance. You see, the overuse of antibiotics is causing a whole lot of other problems. So we've got to starve that fungus. Have a look in your house. There can't be any taint of mold. That's why the house should be high and dry. I'm a greenie. I love trees, but not next to the house. Also, kill. There's a chapter in my book where I go through this. Kill the fungus. The good news is there are herbs that will kill fungus and won't kill you. Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. So they come in to serve you, not to kill. And in my book I list a whole lot of things like olive leaf extract, grapefruit seed extract, portiaco, also oregano essential oil is a very strong one. Oh yeah, oregano, is that what you say? And what I suggest is you alternate it. You might take grapefruit seed extract for 2 weeks. Then you might go olive leaf extract for 2 weeks. Remember what these microbes do, they adapt and adjust. They adapt and adjust. And so alternating the herbs keeps their potency. Also, number 3, bring back the balance. Flood the gastrointestinal tract with the good guys. So there's your probiotic. You'll notice in most countries, traditionally, there was also always cultured foods. If it was in Europe, it was the sauerkraut. If it was in Asia, it was the tofus and the misos. Yogurts, they are all contain that healthy or the friendly flora or bacteria. When you flood the gastrointestinal tract with the good guys, then it brings the yeast back under balance. Number 4, alkalize. On Thursday we'll be giving a whole lecture on the foods that have an acid effect and foods that have an alkaline effect. Everything we give you over the next 2 days, all your drinks are alkalizing drinks. There's only one part of your body that should be acid, and you'll discover this tonight, and that's the stomach. Everywhere else should be alkaline. Can you drink sodium bicarbonate? The only time I would advise drinking sodium bicarbonate is if the person had cancer of the esophagus or cancer of the stomach, because it will only alkalize what it touches. It won't alkalize the tissues. But something that does alkalize the tissues is green drinks. So at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, we gather wild greens, we blend it with water, we strain it, and so a guest that comes to us wanting help with cancer, we get them to drink a litre of green drink over the day. So when you have the green drink, it goes into the tissues with an alkaline effect because it's very high in the alkaline minerals. Something else, and I know they have it here, is the hyperbaric chamber. Cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen, and the hyperbaric chamber floods the body with oxygen. A lady rang me up and she said, Barbara, a doctor in America is just discovering that cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. I said, that is not a new discovery. In my book, I quote Dr. Otto Warburg, I think he was a professor in 1943. He got a Nobel Prize for discovering that. They need to go back in and look at their history. You see, cancer consumes 15 times the glucose of any other cell. That's why we want to starve it. Cancer loves an acid environment. That's why we want to alkalize. And cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen, so we oxygenate the body. On YouTube, I know there's a demo of me doing sodium bicarbonate wraps. I talked to an Indian couple yesterday evening from India who are thinking of coming to our retreat. And they have started doing the sodium bicarbonate wraps. I didn't even know they were up on YouTube. In fact, that's when I was before the Inquisition, I mean the tribunal, who was assessing why I was so dangerous. And apparently I'm still very dangerous. They said, why did you put the sodium bicarbonate wraps on YouTube? I said, I didn't. I didn't. And they said, well, why is it up there? I said, well, a doctor filmed me. Who is this doctor? And when I told them he was in New Zealand, well, they had to let that one go. If he'd been Australian, they would have taken him down. So simple. So simple. So we have seen many people conquer cancer doing this. In fact, I quote them in my lectures. One is Elizabeth Cott. She came to us 5 years ago now, and she had 3 big tumours in her abdomen. She did what I've shown you here. She said to me, I'm a vegetarian. She was in her late 50s, I think, when she came to us, maybe early 60s. She said, I'm the dessert maker at church. Now in Australia we have a dessert called pavlova. Have you heard of pavlova? It's like meringue. It's like meringue, it's that high, and then they have cream and strawberries on top. Well, if someone gives you a pavlova, just eat the strawberries. She said, I would make a pavlova this big and I would put 16 cups of white sugar in it. Because I think they beat egg whites and white sugar and then they bake it in it. It's sort of, yeah, that sort of thing. She said, I believe I was feeding my cancer with sugar, and when she heard this, then it started to make sense to her. She was a vegetarian. You would think, well, how come she could get cancer? It's the sugar. So the sugar feeds it. When she first went to the doctor said, you've got to start chemo and radiotherapy immediately. She decided to come to our retreat. She went back 3 months later. He did all the tests. He said, I'll come back and see me in 6 months. Now, what did he say on the first time? All her cancer markers had come down. Her inflammatory markers had come down. She went back after a year and the first tumour had totally gone. She's lost weight, she's off her CPAP machine, she's off her blood pressure medication. She said to me, I haven't felt this good since my 40s. So the tumours are gone now. And so what the Inquisition wanted, the tribunal, they wanted her name and phone number. And she said, bring it on. I will talk to them. Now she gives meetings. She's got a powerful testimony. Now she eats fruit now, but she didn't for 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, you'll see in my book, I think I call it the ultimate healing formula for cancer. After 6 weeks, she went to stage 1 of the antifungal diet, which is just Granny Smith apples and grapefruit, very low sweet, and then 2 months on that, and then to the stage 2 where she just added berries, your low GI fruits. I'm sure she eats like me now, but if she went back to her old way of eating, what would happen? That's right. It's so simple. And we've seen many people conquer cancer by doing these simple things. Who heals them? It is the body. And many people are sick through ignorance. They don't realise what's happening. You may not realise this, but more people die from chemotherapy than the cancer today. You know the old saying, treatment was successful, but the patient died. The body can heal itself if you give it the right condition. And one of the most powerful conditions to give the body for healing is to stop eating. Why? Well, it takes about 1,100 calories to digest a meal. Did you know that? So when you're not digesting a meal, then the body's energies and blood go to other areas. And the area that the energies, extra energies will go to first are the areas of greatest need. It's like what happens when we're at home on holidays. I don't know about you, but I go to the part that my house maybe is bugging me. Every day I wash the clothes and I wash the dishes and I cook the meal and I sweep the floor. You've got your maintenance, and that's what our body does. It does the maintenance. But then when it's got a bit of extra time, it'll go to the areas of greatest need. So it will be different in every single body. It'll be the area of greatest need. Now, before it can cause restoration or regeneration to happen, it has to clean the house. You would never go into an old house and paint a dirty wall, would you? You've got to clean it up first. And that's why this program's often called a detox or a cleanse. And we have 4 main organs of elimination, or 4 garbage disposal units. So it's important while you're on this detox program to ensure that your organs of elimination are eliminating effectively. And the largest organ of elimination is the skin. And we don't often think of the skin as an organ of elimination. In fact, if you were to peel off our skin, it would almost take up half this room. I notice you've got juices ready, so I'm going to pause, say grace, and the staff will bring you your juices. Father in heaven, thank you for juice. Please bless it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, ladies. Everyone's eagerly awaiting their nutrients. Your skin, you think about your skin does three things. It breathes, so it's very important to allow your skin to breathe. E. To allow your skin to breathe. In the James Bond movie Goldfinger, apparently they had a model that was painted gold. They had to paint the front, film that, take it off, then paint the back and film that. You see, if you paint your whole skin, that person will die. There's a sad story of a little girl who was painted gold or painted in a play, and she died. So just think of that. Your skin breathes. Let it breathe. So allow your skin to breathe. How can we ensure that this week? Ensure that you let your skin breathe by being mindful of what you put on it. Another thing is the clothes that you're wearing, especially next to your torso, it's going to be throwing off a lot of waste. So they need to be washed every day. I did an investigation yesterday to see if I can find some clothes. We call them pins, we call them pegs, because we peg the clothes on the line. And I know, I was just in Alabama, and I said to the lady I was staying with near Birmingham, I said, I've got some washing, do you have a clothesline? She said, a what? She said, there's no clotheslines here. She said, I can't believe you asked me that. She said, that's back with the dinosaurs. Well, in Australia we have clotheslines. It seems a strange thing to me that when the sun's shining, you put your clothes in the dryer. I can't understand that. Because you know what the sun does? It purifies your clothes. So let your skin breathe by making sure that you have clean clothes next to your torso every day, making sure that you wash your body every day. So another thing that helps with the skin is water. And we need to be taking water inside, so please at least 8 glasses of water a day. Juice is not water. And if you washed your body in juice, it'd be a little sticky, wouldn't it? So water and water alone is required inside the body. So make sure you have at least 8 glasses of water a day. I want to show you how I do it, because I never used to drink water. And I used to get headaches all the time. I used to have terrible sinus problems. I don't have any of those problems now. And I think it's because one of the main reasons is I'm hydrated now. So I always have my bottle of water next to my bed. I wake up in the morning, I drink half a glass. I go to the bathroom, I drink another half a glass. I get dressed, I have another glass of water, or half a glass. I pray, I have another half glass. So by the time I did my morning walk at 6 o'clock this morning, I had easy 16 ounce already. And then I ran up and down hills and came back, and I had more water. Then I had my hot and cold shower. Your cold is cold. Make sure you're nice and hot. Whoa, but you know, the colder the cold, the better the reaction. And that has an incredible tonic effect. A young man that I know well, I was very concerned. He had a new girlfriend. They were having coffee in the morning, and I didn't say a word. Do I need to? Never nag, because it never does any good. He rang me up about 3 months later. He said, I've just found something more powerful at waking you up in the morning than coffee. I said, yeah? He said, cold shower. Yep. No, not cool. Cold. A cold shower. And by the way, how do you feel when you've turned that tap off? You feel very good. Now at home, I just dive in the creek every morning. And there's a big sign up there that says if you dive in that water, instant death. Have you seen that sign? Well, I don't think it'll be instant death. But I did notice there's a couple of places where there is a little ladder that you can climb out of. Oh, I'm thinking about it. I have to be very hot to do that. It's like in your sauna. You have to be very hot to handle that cold. But it's only quick. So we need water in, and we also need water out. So the out water is, ideally we'd like you to have at least 2 showers a day while you're here, because you're throwing off a lot of waste. One of the showers can be your sauna. Also, your skin needs you to exercise, because when you exercise, you increase the circulation of the blood to the skin. And when you increase the circulation of the blood to the skin, you increase your skin's ability to throw off waste. And when again, your skin is throwing off a lot of waste. In fact, this is what the research shows: 70% of your body's waste can come out of your skin if your skin's given the right conditions. Think of that when you're in your sauna today and you're perspiring a lot. The second organ of elimination is your lungs. And your lungs need fresh air. I hope everyone's sleeping with your windows wide open at night, yes? Is there nods there? Even with the boom, boom, boom in the background, I have my window open. Many people wake up tired because they're not breathing fresh air while they sleep. And up here in the mountains, the air's nice and cool in the morning, isn't it? And it's very nice and cool through the night. So our lungs need fresh air. Our lungs also need for us to exercise. While you're sitting in front of me here, you're breathing in about 500 mil and you're breathing out 500 mil. When you're running up hills and you get to the point of breathing very, very deeply, you're breathing in 3,600 mil of air and you're breathing out 3,600 mil of waste. Oh, that's good news, isn't it? Think of that next time you're breathing very, very deeply. Your lungs also need for you to be well hydrated, because every exhalation you take, you're breathing out a little bit of water, and that water needs to be replaced. At this point, I'd like to talk to you a little minute about your body's vacuum cleaner. What's a vacuum cleaner? It sucks up waste, is that right? Sucks up waste. And how clean would your house be if you vacuum cleaned it every day? It'd be very clean. Well, you have a vacuum cleaner. It's called the lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system, it sweeps away waste from the tissues. And it's lots of little capillaries that have little gates all the way along. And they're one-way gates. And we're so glad they're one-way gates. They're one-way gates so that the waste doesn't come back. Your blood system has a pump, and that is your heart. But your lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. The only way you can stimulate your lymphatic system is movement. But the most powerful way to move your lymphatic system is rebounding. That little mini trampoline. So when you are jumping on the mini trampoline, if you're not used to the trampoline and if you can't jump, just start with this. This is the health bounce. You can just a little bit. If you're a little unsteady on your feet, hold on to the bars there. If there's no bar, hold on to something nearby. And then as you get more proficient at it, you can start to bounce a little bit more and then bounce a little bit bigger. When you're bouncing on that little rebounder, also called a lymphosizer, when you're up to the tip of your bounce, every gate opens. When you hit the mat, every gate closes. When you're up the top, every gate opens. When you hit the mat, every gate closes. So it's like a pumping system. And what happens is, as your lymphatic system sweeps away waste from the tissue, it throws the waste out via the skin. It throws the waste out via the lungs. It throws the waste out via the third organ of elimination, and that is the kidneys. The good news is you only have to rebound for 2 minutes and it'll stimulate your vacuum cleaner, your lymphatic system to basically be running all day. And all you have to do is scratch your head, turn around, move a little bit, and that little bit of movement just keeps it running. Just keeps it running all through the day. So that's another thing that you can do to help in this detox, is to rebound every day. Now, I think that just about every building has one. So if there gets a bit of a traffic jam, there's one in the gym and there's one at the lifestyle and at the annex. Yeah. And remember, if someone is on it, they're not going to be on it for too much longer. Okay, so just a few minutes is all that's necessary. Your kidneys need water. What water does is it thins the blood, and then it's very easy for your kidneys to filter thin blood. Let me show you what happens with the kidneys. We're going to go to the smallest component of the kidney, which is the Bowman's capsule, and it's this little Bowman's capsule where the blood is filtered. Then the waste is taken out via what's called the filtrate. The filtrate is what's filtered out of the kidneys and then down into the bladder to be urinated out. So the blood comes in and it weaves around the filtering units where it's filtered, and then when the blood comes out, it weaves around the tubules. So in our kidneys, we have 1 million in one kidney. So there's our kidney, and all these filtering units are all on the edge, and then these tubules all weave down like this. Then there's the ureter from the other kidney, the bladder, and then it's urinated out. In a 24-hour period, these little filtering units filter 1,800 litres of blood. Now, we don't have that much blood, but every 2 minutes, 1.2 litres is being filtered. Out of the 1,800 litres of blood, 180 litres of filtrate is filtered out. But we only urinate 1.5 litres, aren't you glad? Otherwise, we'd all be leaving this lecture every 10 minutes. We only urinate out 1.5 litres. So there's a shortfall of approximately 160 litres there. That's because there's a reabsorption here. And we'll look at that in detail when we look at our acid-alkaline lecture. Proverbs 14 verse 6 states that knowledge is easy to him that understands. I'm endeavouring to give you an understanding of how the kidney works, then you know how to treat it. If that blood is thin because you're drinking adequate water, it's very easy to filter the blood. Something else that's important, and that is that the kidneys need to be warm. Notice where the filtering units are, they're all on the edge of the kidney. So if this area at the back here is cold, there's not a lot of blood going to be going in there. So you can have a lady dehydrated, cold kidneys, and she can develop a urinary tract infection because her kidney can't effectively get rid of the waste. So the waste is staying around, and then your own microorganisms evolve into a bacteria form to clean up the waste. Another illustration of how diseases are born in us and of us. One of the best things to do if someone gets a UTI, urinary tract infection, is to keep those kidneys warm. And even in summer you have to be careful of that, because most places here in America are air conditioned, and I find they're very cold. And so the kidneys still can get cold, so they need to be covered. So to look after the kidneys, keep them warm, make sure you're drinking adequate water, and the kidneys don't like it when you drink 16 ounce all at once. They don't like that. They like it when you spread it out. Okay? You spread it out. Kidneys need to be warm, kidneys need water, and kidneys need exercise. When you exercise, you increase the circulation of the blood to the kidneys, and when you exercise, the kidneys are moving. Just picture this when you're on the rebounder. What are the kidneys doing? Bounce, 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 bounce. What are they doing when you're walking? So exercise strengthens and tones the kidneys. Number 4, when you consider it, only microscopic waste can come out of skin, lungs and kidneys. The largest pieces of waste is eliminated via the colon. And the colon has a mind of its own. Have you noticed? If you've got diarrhea and you tell it to stop, it won't. And if you've got constipation and you tell it to go, it won't. It is a mind of its own. So it needs gentle stimulation. So what stimulates the colon? How can we gently stimulate the colon? The first one might surprise you, and its position. So let me draw the colon to help understand this. And of course that's also where the lymphatic system dumps its waste, is absolutely via the colon. We're going to be having another look at this in a little bit more detail tonight, but I'd like to just touch on this now. There's the appendix, there's where the small intestine comes in. Here's the colon, and at the end of the colon there is a loop like that, and there is a muscle that holds up that loop, and it's called puborectalis. And we're very glad of puborectalis because this muscle prevents accidents, and that's something we do not want. When a person's sitting on the throne, so here is the throne, doing their daily evacuation, puborectalis remains taut. Obviously things can come through, but if someone is sitting on the throne and in front of the throne they have a little stool, or maybe they went to Bed Bath and Beyond and bought a squatty potty, which can actually wrap around the toilet, but what they're doing now is they're mimicking the squatting position. So when the squatting position is mimicked, puborectalis relaxes and it opens. And when puborectalis relaxes, then the colon opens up and the contents can be passed with ease. Now this does a few things. It prevents hemorrhoids, because let's say this person who is sitting on the throne has not been for 2 days and they decided to encourage things along a little bit and start straining, all the pressure goes to there. And something's got to give, and sometimes it's called hemorrhoids, and they're nasty things, very nasty things. So what's medicine's answer to hemorrhoids? I'll put a stitch around the neck of them and cut them off. Woo, torture's alive and well, is that right? I used to assist in an operating theatre in my 20s, and we did a hemorrhoidectomy, and whoa. I think, wow, how's that man going to feel when he wakes up? Nothing compared to how he's going to feel when he passes his first bowel motion. And yet, if he was told about squatting, his first bowel motion would not be as painful. So squatting prevents hemorrhoids, and it also is an important part in the treatment of hemorrhoids. On Wednesday night we're going to be doing a demonstration here on poultices, and I'll be showing a few little bits and pieces that can bring relief. So to stimulate the colon, it's important to use the right position, and the best position is to squat. When I was in Singapore and I went into a shopping mall, you can choose to go to the Westerner toilets or the local toilets. And the locals is just a hole in the ground. It's all tiled and it's flush, but it's a hole where you squat. And then when I was in India, same thing. I stayed in a very nice apartment with this family. I was given my own room and my own bathroom, and I went in and it's a hole in the floor. And when I was in Africa, I saw the same thing. And when I was in Asia, I saw the same thing. You'll find many countries traditionally that, in fact, still today, it's the squatting position. Science now shows why. This is a superior position to use when doing your daily evacuation, because puborectalis opens, which allows easy evacuation of the contents. What's also important for the colon is exercise, because when you exercise, you increase the circulation of the blood to the colon, and when you exercise, your colon moves. When you're rebounding, it's moving like this. When you're walking, when you're on the floor doing core strengthening exercises, the colon is moving. What's also important to stimulate the colon is laughter. Laughter relaxes the colon. Proverbs 17:22. The Bible says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. I'd like to suggest that a broken spirit dries up the colon. It's important to relax. It's important to laugh. The research shows that children laugh 125 times a day, so should we. Also, the colon needs fibre. Fibre sweeps the colon. All these little grooves and corners need to be swept every day, and that's what fibre does. It not only sweeps the colon, but it also stimulates peristalsis, or movement in the colon. We're not giving you any fibre for 2.5 days, so we offer you herbs. And these herbs gently stimulate peristalsis. Some people need half a cup a day, some people need none, some people need 1 cup a day, some people need 2 cups a day. Very occasionally, someone might need 3 cups a day. So please just let the staff know. If you have not had an evacuation by the middle of the day today, please see the staff and they'll give you a little bit more. So these first couple of days are just determining how much that you need. It's important that this organ of elimination be evacuating every day, because the body is dumping the largest pieces of waste into the colon. The colon also requires water. One of the main functions of the colon is to take water out so stools are formed. In dehydration, more water is taken out than should be taken out, so it's important to be well hydrated. There's one more tiny little organ of elimination, and that's your tongue. And don't be surprised if when you wake up in the morning the tongue doesn't feel very nice, because it's going to be throwing off waste. And there's a simple thing you can do to help pull the waste out. It's called oil pulling. And it requires you to take a spoonful of coconut oil, put it in your mouth, and then swish. Swish, swish. You might swish for 10 seconds, rest for 10 seconds, swish for 10 seconds. You swish for about 10 minutes, and it will pull waste out of your tongue. It'll pull waste out of the blood vessels under your tongue. It'll pull waste out of the glands under your tongue. And after 10 minutes, please don't release it down the plug hole. Please go out on the grass and release it on the grass. Take your water bottle with you and rinse your mouth a couple of times and release that out. You'll give some food for the microbes in the soil. If you release it down the sink, that coconut oil will go hard when it hits the cool pipes, and it'll block up the plumbing, and we don't want that. Not only does this oil pull waste from the glands under your tongue, the blood vessels under your tongue, it seems also to pull from your respiratory. So one lady who had sinus problems, she said, every time I oil pull, I have to take a few tissues, because she said, I blow and waste is coming out. It seems to also release there. Another lady who had a chest problem, she said, every time I oil pull, I cough up a couple of lumps. And isn't that great? In fact, where was it before you coughed it up? And by the way, what if it's yellow? Is that an infection? No, it's just your white blood cells doing their job down there in the lungs. Understanding the cycle of life, you begin to look at things, the microbes, in another way. So I trust that you will be mindful of your organs of elimination and give them the right conditions so that this detox can be effective in detoxifying you. How often would you oil pull? You could even do it 3 times a day while you're on the detox. It's a matter of finding time. You might do it when you get back from your morning walk. I tried to do it on my morning walk one day, but when you're running up hills, you need your mouth to breathe through, so that didn't work. And I also find it easier to have after your lemon. I had lemon water one day, then I oil pulled, but it sort of catches your throat. So you'll find a time to do it. You might do it now after this lecture. You might do it before the 12 o'clock juice. So you just find a time. You might do it before or after your sauna treatment. So it's just finding a time to do it. But if you can do these things, you will get more out of your detox. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the liver in the first lecture, and your liver is orchestrating the detox. Tomorrow morning you will be going into a different stage of detox, and I'll be explaining that stage tomorrow morning. And the second lecture tomorrow, I'll be looking at the little chemical messengers in your body called hormones. And so that's tomorrow lecture. And tonight we're going to have a look at the incredible process of what the body does to the food on your plate and how it breaks it up into microscopic substances. Then it gets absorbed into your blood. And tomorrow morning, the first lecture is the liver. Then we're going to have a look at what happens when it gets into the blood. So thank you for your attention, and I trust you will enjoy your day. Thank you.